Hey there, it's your host, Mara Glatzel, and you are listening to Even Here, Even Now, a podcast where we are devoted to sharing frank conversations and true stories about what it means to stay by your own side and meet your needs consistently, messily, and sustainably. Now, on to today's show. Whole holy point of being alive is to live your life as the most radiantly alive version of you possible. Not the most productive, not the most impressive, the most alive. This is a question that I've been asking myself a lot over the course of the last couple of years, certainly, but definitely the last 9 months, the whole start of this year. Because I know that for myself, there are so many things that get in the way of my radiant aliveness. In fact, there's a whole ass problem as it relates to the belief that my life is for living. My life is for me. The lie that so many of us inherited is that a good life is earned, that we get our aliveness after we've completed the to-do list, which never ends, after our kids grow up, after we've somehow earned it enough to deserve it. We are taught that being a good person means putting everyone else first. That the only way to make sustainable and real contributions to the world around us that we want to make is putting everyone else first, putting our work first. And I know that this is certainly true for the caregivers amongst us, those of us in helping professions, mental health care professionals, teachers, nurses, those of us who help other people, social workers, those of us who help other people professionally. But I see this personally too. And I know that for many of us, the personal and the professional is interwoven. That's how we found ourselves into these professions to begin with, because we are good at tending to people. It feels innate to tend to people. So we have all of these different overlays, right? The kind of societal conditioning, the messaging around what it means to be a good girl and a good woman. We might have our own natural inclinations towards helping others and being a support system for the people who are in our lives, and that really matters to us. We may have brought that innate sense of self into our professional life. So we have that personal professional thing where we're showing up for other people in every pocket, every facet of our lives. And we may also carry a belief that our needs are the problem, right? Our needs are a burden. Our needs are too much for the people around us. It may be that the people that we were around during our upbringing were overwhelmed by our needs. And so we got that message. It may be that we saw that they were overwhelmed and we didn't want to burden them additionally with our needs. But I think too, I've talked here before about the needy woman trope and the multiple different formats for how we receive the messages that, especially as women and those of us who are socialized as girls during our upbringing, that the needs are the problem and that we should get our needs out of here so that we can get back to the mechanics of being productive members of society, of living our daily lives. Like, the needs are the things that stand between us and the belonging that we ache for. Now, when you're small, when you're a kid, it's not just that your need for belonging matters. It's not just that your need for belonging is important. Of course it's important, but the need for belonging and the need for safety sit so close to one another, because when we are young, we genuinely need to belong in order to survive. We don't have access to our own things. We can't, find our own food. We can't, there are so many really powerful motivators for becoming whomever we think we need to be in order to belong. So how does this all fit together? Well, when we have these multiple layers of both micro, family of origin, community around us during our upbringing, messaging, and also this overlay of the overculture, it creates this sense that everyone agrees our needs are the problem. Everyone agrees being needy is bad. Everyone agrees that putting everyone else first is right and good. Everyone else agrees that you can only take care of yourself when you get to the bottom of your to-do list. And so even when we might feel in our own individual life like this isn't working, or I'm just I'm really struggling, or I can't keep up, or I have these needs I don't know what to do with, we shove that down because we need and want to belong. We need and want to be perceived in a certain kind of way because we associate that perception with safety. And look, I'm going to be real with you. It's scary because it's true. It is certainly, I mean, whenever I work on this with my clients, I always ask, like, how is this working for you? Even if it's not working for you, how is this working for you? Right? And what has absolutely been true for me is I get a lot of validation for being everything to everyone. I get a lot of validation for how I am able to be and respond in a crisis, how I am able to show up for others, how I am able to put other people first, how I am able to kind of be this superhero person. But underneath that forced capacity, so often I was unwell. And because this is my life's work, I was really sort of plagued by this feeling of knowing how unsustainable it is. And this is the trick with burnout, right? One could, one will become burnt out. If you're operating in this framework, you absolutely will. It's not an if, it's a when. You absolutely will become burnt out. I have been burnt out multiple times in my life in different ways. Starting with a pretty profound burnout during my early 20s when I was in grad school, becoming a social worker, starting for the first time to divest from a lot of beliefs that I had about being good, being perfect, doing everything exactly as I had learned that it should be done, right? Trying to be good enough to belong, trying to be good enough to be loved, trying to be good enough to ensure my safety. There was another sort of tricky thing at play here. I had this idea that if I did all of these things, if I showed up for everyone else, if I did the to-do list, fastidiously doing the to-do list, if I accessed every last ounce of my executive functioning, that at some point I would feel as though I was worthy enough, I was deserving enough, I would love myself enough that taking care of myself would be easy. I believed that if I kept kind of grinding, I would reach a point where it was inevitable. My care was inevitable because the ease would feel easy because I had earned it. But what I learned and what I teach now, and which I'm just going to be so real with you, I did not want this to be the answer, period, the end. Did not want this to be the answer, was that time's not ever coming. It is not ever going to feel easier. You're not going to be walking around the world and all of a sudden this self-love epiphany just bops you on the head because you have done enough labor for everyone else, tangibly and intangibly, that your worth is indisputable. And then it is going to be easy to take care of yourself. And so when I first started my business 15 years ago, it was kind of born out of this understanding that what actually works, what actually leads to a life where you feel well nourished and well tended is to stop waiting to love yourself and start taking radical self-responsibility for your life, for your body, for this ecosystem that you inhabit on a daily basis. And it was incredible to me to notice that, wow, I was a stranger to myself. It seems like that's impossible because we're with ourselves every single day. But I had been so hyper-focused on what was right and what was good and what everyone else wanted from me that I had never paused to intimately familiarize myself with my own inner workings, with my own needs, with my preferences, with my desires, with what I like for breakfast to do next. When somebody asks me a question, right? I knew what the right answer was. I was a student of the right answer, but I didn't know what my answer was. And so I developed this framework that I still use 15 years in my work, which is that taking radical self-responsibility enables us to responsibly care for ourselves, which builds self-trust and inevitably blossoms into self-love. So instead of waiting till this magical time out there where it's easy and where you love yourself and so you want to take care of yourself, I started working with myself first and then my clients to start with radical self-responsibility. Start with the premise that I am my own responsibility, that my needs are my responsibility. Now, this is where I'll tell you, I didn't want this to be the answer. I wanted to become lovable enough to be worth taking care of. I wanted life to ride up on a white horse and save me. I wanted external validation that I was worthy of care. I thought if I became good enough or I just optimized myself enough that I wouldn't have to figure all these things out because people would just see me as worthy and hand me my needs met on a platter. I don't want to understate how much of a disappointment it is for those of us who have been the responsible ones since birth to be told that no one is coming to save you. That devastated me. And so if you're hearing me talk and you're like, but, I'm so tired. I don't want it to be me. I don't want it to be me. I hear you. There is so much space for, please tantrum your way through it. I hope you stomp. I hope you cry. I don't hope you cry, but you know what I mean? I hope you let yourself feel how unfair it is after everything that you have done to also be responsible for yourself. And also, you are actually, each and every one of us is actually the number one best person, the expert to our needs. It is actually a really good thing that you are responsible for yourself because you're the only person on the planet who is best equipped for that job. And learning how to know what you need, how to honor those needs and how to ask for it is something you can learn. It is something it's something I've learned. I've learned it. I practice it. I built an entire body of work around it. My life's mission on this planet is to help people do exactly this thing. And I have so much empathy for it because for those of us who are ambitious, responsible, pointed in the direction of being ultra competent, and that is worth, it doesn't feel good to start something new. It doesn't feel good to delve into a part of our lives where we don't feel confident, where we don't feel competent, where it's I don't know what I need. I don't even know what's on the table to need. And I really want you to hear me say that, of course you don't. We don't have role models for this. We don't have a shared cultural vocabulary for this. We don't even have a shared cultural understanding that this is something that matters. But I have to believe that if you are here, and I know that this is why I am here, it is because the way of doing things that you have defaulted to for your whole life doesn't work. It's not working. Right? There is a part of you that knows, that yearns. It's there must be something more than this. I see other people. It seems like they're having more fun. It seems like they're more alive. I want that. And even if you might be in a space of saying that's for them and not me, I want to meet you in that space. Why not you? Why not you? If the whole holy point of being alive is to live your life as the most radiantly alive version of you as possible, not the most productive, not the most impressive, the most alive. Why not you? How do you want to live? How do you want your life to be? And trust me when I say that I fully believed that this was going to break everything, when in fact, it brought everything into full bloom in my life. It's not perfect, but it is infinitely more sustainable, more nourishing on my worst day, in my worst crisis, in my worst grief, than it was in my 20s when I was burnt out and I did not have the inner resources to meet myself in my hardest and darkest moments. So a vision that I love to think about for this, like a metaphor for this, is, I don't know if you remember that movie Pleasantville, where everything was black and white. And the mother is like, she has the black and white makeup on her face and she like rubs it off, and underneath her skin has color. And then there's the bush outside that like turns into technicolor, right? This is how I envision my life before and after. So, so much of this work is kind of ephemeral and intangible, and it can be difficult to point to exactly what is different. And also everything is different. And so this is a visual that I just love to hold on to for myself. It's like everything is in color. Everything is in color. I'm no longer waiting for something, someone, some perfect day, some blank space in my calendar to ride up on its white horse and save me from myself. Because I am here. I'm present and accounted for. I am actually living and breathing in my life. Before I feel ready, even when I have doubts, even when, the shit hits the fan and I'm filled with grief and things are really hard. I spoke in my last podcast about some of the things that have been really tricky over the course of my last couple of years. And something that I want to say is, even though I have returned to a state of contraction, even though I have returned to a space of burnout at a few points over the last 5 years, so much has happened. I had a baby, a book came out. It was the first couple of years of COVID. My child was 9 months old when when lockdown started. I wrote a book, I published that book. We took care of a friend as he passed away. There's so many things in there, so many things that I wouldn't have even been able to show up for in any sense if I hadn't developed some of these tools that I lean on when things are difficult. And so I really want to plant the seeds here of what is possible, and also say that your needs aren't the problem. Your needs are the doorway, because your felt experience of your life matters just as much, if not more, than everything that you do and everything that you tangibly create. All of the people that you show up for, all of your contributions, right? Your felt experience of your life as you are doing all of those things matters just as much as the external product or the way that it looks, or, what other people perceive. And this is how we start to weave care into the lives that we have now, instead of waiting for a time out there, to really consider each and every one of us our felt experience of our lives. Like, all right, I have a banger of a day. What would make this day even just 5% easier or more doable, or make me feel 5% more supported as I navigate it? Okay, this is a thin season in my life. What do I need? What do I need to delegate? What do I need to put off? What do I need to ask for help with? What do I need to have a different expectation or timeline for, in order to increase my satisfaction, my peace, my ease here, like in the muck, in the mess of it with myself? You are a vessel for everything that you create, everything that you do, which means that your nourishment, your care, your tending is incredibly important, particularly if you really deeply care about all of the things that you do, all of the things that you hold, and all of the things that you show up for, right? I talked at the beginning of this podcast about how what I started to realize was how unsustainable things are. Well, when you're constantly borrowing against yourself and you're not putting anything back into that tank, part of what's stressful is that on some level that the floor will drop out at some point. And you're always just trying to safeguard yourself against that. one of the best ways that I know, the only way I know, to not safeguard ourselves against that, but to ensure that when shit happens, because it will, that I am relatively robustly well tended to. That's my default. So that when I enter a thin time, I'm not already entering the thin time on empty. But some of us are in a thin time right now. And so this also works if you're in a moment of burnout right now. How can I weave just a little bit more care? How can I honor the fact that I am a living, breathing ecosystem, right? I want to, like, Horton Hears a Who. I want you to imagine like Horton with this like little teeny tiny speck of earth. And on that speck of earth, all of those little who's are living, right? You are the speck of earth. You are the village of who's, like inside of your body, all of your cells, all of your organs, the blood, your digestion, right? All of this is like, you are an ecosystem unto yourself. You have much more in common with the natural world around you than you do with, whatever little robot you are hearing this podcast from. So when we acknowledge that, and when we start to take ourselves into consideration, we can change the very soil of the ecosystem that we exist in. And this isn't huge. Like they can't be huge, right? One of my mentors, Carmen Spaniola, loves to say small is all, and small is all. Not just because that's what works, but also because that's what we're capable of in 2026. We have full and big lives. We have myriad responsibilities. And so small has to be all. That's just the way of it. That's the way of it. And I am just as much as the rest of us. It's like I was a student of the big shiny plan. I would lay in bed and I'd be like, okay, all right, summer. This is how far back it goes. It's like summer break. Here's what I'm going to do so that when I get on September 1st, when school starts, yada, 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 right? Creating this big, vast plan that I have no business creating, and I am absolutely not going to be able to rock up to because I am overwhelmed almost immediately into inaction. That cannot be the answer. It's sexy, sure. It's seductive, sure. Many of us make those plans over and over and over and over and over again. But the big, shiny plan requires big shiny energy. None of us have. Big shiny spaces in our calendar. None of us have. And it also requires big shiny belief, which we're building. Like, look, this is what we're up to right now. We're building that. So here's what I want to offer to you. The number one core skill in all of my teachings is the micro-attunement of a daily check-in. And I want you to ask yourself, just for a moment, slow down enough, just for a moment to ask yourself, how am I really? Right? We're using this water metaphor because we're teeing up for this awesome extravaganza I have at the end of the month, Wet. You might want to ask yourself, on a scale from parched to drenched, where are you? Parched to soaked, where are you? Right? And I want you to remember that whatever answer you get is perfect and is also data, right? This is my next podcast coming out next week is going to be all about this. This is data. You're not getting a bad report card. This is nothing to be ashamed of. It is information from your ecosystem that helps you responsively tend to yourself. So I like to do this in the morning when I first wake up, and I try to check in with myself before I check in with my to-do list, because I used to go to my to-do list and then I would tell myself who I had to be. Like, okay, Mara, you have all of these things to do today. Like, get your shit together. And now I try to swap that up, check in with myself first, and ask how I am. How am I? Right? Today, I'm coming to you live. It was the new moon yesterday. It was a solar eclipse. It was a big energy day. I threw a wild raucous bonfire for my best friend was visiting, and I invited a bunch of friends. It was there was a lot of like heavy lifting and hauling and, yada, yada. I woke up this morning with both of my kids in my bed. I had been up fairly fairly frequently in the night. And I woke up this morning and I feel tired. I feel my body sore. My ankle, I have a injury where I have some chronic pain in my ankle, sore. So all of that is information, right? I could default to totally inconvenient, got a whole list of things I got to do today. Mara, get it together, Mara. But instead, I have a practice, and I want to share this with all of you. I have a practice of checking in with myself and then checking in with my list and using that information to see how I can weave care into this day. So today I have my kids. I have a lot of things going on. I have something I'm really excited about this afternoon. But I feel how I feel when I woke up, right? This is the body that I'm in. This is the ecosystem that I'm in today. So if I want to do the things that I want and need to do today, I need to consider what I'm going to require, what my felt experience of this day is going to require in order to do that as well as possible. So do I need more water? Do I need some tending? Do I need to make sure that I'm eating 3 nutrient-dense meals today? Yep. Do I need to promise myself that even though there's going to be a lot going on today, I'm going to put my kids to bed after this super fun thing we're doing this afternoon, and I'm going to get in the bathtub, and I'm going to have an early bedtime myself, right? Thinking about my whole day in a holistic way, given everything I want and need to do today. What care, what support can I offer myself in this day that makes that possible? Now, there are some organizational things, right? If I want to take a bath this evening, I'm gonna maybe like put things in the dishwasher over the course of the day instead of waiting until the end of the night and then have a whole bunch of, stuff to do and then have to yada, 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 right? So like, this is kind of how I think about it. And I share this with you because these are the brass tacks of okay, but how. I gave you a big vision at the top of this podcast about that whole holy point of being alive is to live my life as the most radiantly alive version of me as possible. Okay. So that question, that has to do with my needs. That has to do with the data that I'm getting about myself in context today. And that has to do with taking myself into consideration. I saw a reel on Instagram the other day that said that the number one love language of the oldest daughter is being taken into consideration. And I have found that to be the case. Oldest daughters unite. I have found that to be the case, but I think many of us, all of us, thrive in a state of consideration. And, Mary Oliver said something to the effect of, awareness is the first step of devotion. And so checking in with ourselves, if we want to be devoted to our lives, if we want to be devoted to becoming the most well-nourished version of ourselves as possible, the most radiantly alive version of ourselves as possible, and this is like my intentional anchor. I am always oriented towards my own radiant aliveness after a lifetime of not even considering that at all. So this has been a sea change for me, and I offer it to you because it has been such a fruitful one, right? What do I need today? What is doable today to take my felt sense, my experience of my day into consideration? And you better believe I will be teeing up my water. You better believe I will be like making sure I get some little electrolytes in there. You better believe I will be feeding myself something 3 times a day. You better believe I will be remembering my promise to myself to get into the bathtub at the end of the day after I've done all these things and get into bed early. I'm going to try. I'm going to aim for it, right? Even if I aim for it and I fall a little bit short, I'm still infinitely further along than I would be if I didn't take myself into consideration to begin with. All right, friends, I put that forward to you. This is a call to action. This is a call to take yourself, your needs into consideration, to take a moment to check in with yourself and ask yourself, like, how can I offer just 5% more support to you today? What do you need from me? What's doable? What's possible? And remember that small is all and small is enough. It is more than enough. You got to stop waiting until you can do like the whole self-care routine that you tell yourself is needed. Put that to the side. That day isn't coming anytime soon. So what we have to work with are the small ways we can support ourselves. And you can get started with that right this second. And I hope you do. Okay. Sending a lot of love your way. Thanks for listening to Even Here, Even Now with Mara Glatzel. If you want my support in learning to stay by your own side and nourish your needs, dance on over to maraglatzel.com/quiz to take my quiz to figure out what you need right now and receive my best tools for how to meet those needs with a greater sense of ease and confidence. If you love today's show, please leave us a rating or review wherever you subscribe to this podcast. It helps more than you know. And as always, permission loves company. If there's a human in your life that you think can benefit from this conversation, I would be so grateful if you shared it with them. Thank you. See you next time.